Good morning, councillors. Good morning to executive team. Good morning to visitors, and of course, good morning to those joining us this morning in the digital gallery. It's my privilege to declare the ordinary meeting of Tuesday, the 8th of August 2023 open. And in doing so, I would once again pause and acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet and across which our beautiful region is formed. I pay respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and congratulate them on their continued nurture of culture. Councillors, I note a full attendance of councillors, and for those in the digital gallery, Councillor McConnell is joining us remotely today with approval to participate in the meeting. Therefore, there are no apologies, and it is a privilege this morning to welcome to the chamber Pastor David Mugridge from the Tamborine Mountain Presbyterian Church to lead us in prayers.
Thank you, councillors, and Mayor, it's nice to get off the mountain, or the island as some of the locals call it. In the first century, it's 2,000 years ago now, the Apostle Paul wrote to the earliest Christians. He wrote this: I urge then, first of all, that petitions, prayers, intercessions and thanksgiving be made for all people, for kings, and for all those in authority, that we may live peaceful and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness. This is good and pleases God our Saviour, who wants all people to be saved and to come to a knowledge of the truth. For there is one God and one mediator between God and mankind, the man Christ Jesus, who gave himself as a ransom for all people. Thanks for the privilege that you kindly grant of letting us pray for you, those with authority in local government, and also to pray for our region. Let me pray now. Our Father in heaven, thank you for these councillors, each one. Thank you that you make it good for our souls to pray for theirs. And we thank you that we live in a country and a time where all citizens, no matter our background, get to decide on our rulers. And we acknowledge just how uniquely healthy democracy is in the wide scope of human history. We ask that you give our mayor and councillors wisdom and courage to make difficult decisions today that benefit our region before they benefit themselves or their friends. Help them to serve us well. And please help us to honour and respect them every day. Pray for those in our region grieving loved ones. Pray for those sick among us now. Pray for those dying. Pray for the lonely and the outcast among us. For those of us who are personally ashamed or shamed by others. We pray for those weighed down with guilt, those bound up with pride. Pray for workers enjoying their work, all struggling to find work, for businesses searching for workers, for those unable to work. Pray for those in our nursing homes and hospitals. Pray for our school students and teachers trying to get back to normal and try and deal with the various things on their plates. Pray for our medical carers, emergency services and policemen and women. Pray for those who want to change things for the better, who want to build things for the future. For those with energy and enthusiasm and a vision for just how prosperous our region can be. So we pray for all people in the Scenic Rim. We pray for each man and woman and child in our region, for you to extend to us all your tender grace and mercy and peace. So Lord, please bless these men and women here this morning. Give them personal insight into their own motivations and convictions. Help them to be honest and direct and dignified for their benefit and ours. We ask that all people in our region may be helped by our council to live peaceful and quiet lives. And I ask this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you, Dave, for joining us. You're obviously welcome to continue, but I know you've got to stay with the statement. You've obviously got other business to attend to. Thank you for the work you do in our community and the leadership role that you undertake and taking care of the community. We appreciate it. Thank you. Councillors, I move to item 5. I'm informed there are no questions, public question time today. We therefore move to item 6. The CEO, I believe we've been advised of one declaration for this morning.
Through Mr. Mayor, that will be Councillor Hay.
Councillor Hay, which matter will that pertain to? So, thank you. That will be item 11.3.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you, Councillor. We note that no other declarations. Then, councillors, I do have before us today, I do have an announcement that I would like to share, councillors, with your forbearance. And this concerns the release of the draft Shaping SEQ 2023 update. Councillors, I'd like to bring to your attention and that of the community the recent release of the Queensland Government's draft Shaping SEQ 2023 update, the South East Queensland Regional Plan, the draft South East Queensland Infrastructure Supplement, SEQUIS, for public consultation. The development of the SEQ Regional Plan and SEQUIS has been ongoing for some time, and whilst council officers and I have been included in some meetings, I must express my concern at the content of this latest draft document, which has been produced in the context of the current housing pressures due to South East Queensland's significant growth since 2017. Councillors, I encourage you all to not only seek community feedback from your respective divisions, but also to encourage your community members to make use of the online feedback tool to respond to these, as the draft Shaping SEQ 2023 update has long-term and wide-ranging implications for the Scenic Rim. A public consultation session led by the Department of State Development, Infrastructure, Local Government and Planning is planned for the 7th of September at the Centre in Beaudesert. I encourage members of our community to come along and provide their feedback on this plan, which will contribute to shaping the future of our region. The draft plan can be found on the Queensland Government website, planning.statedevelopment.qld.gov.au, and will be open to community consultation until 20th September 2023. Thank you, councillors. I move to item 8. I'm not advised of any deputations or petitions to be tabled today, so we come to item 9 of our agenda, which deals with the confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. And the resolution for us to consider is just for us to adopt. We've got a technical glitch gone missing from the screen for a moment. I apologise. We'll get this up. So just bear with us for a moment. July. Yeah. Councillors, the resolution for our consideration is that the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on 18th of July 2023 be adopted. I seek a mover. Councillor McInnes. Seconder. Councillor West, thank you. Any questions to those minutes? If not, Councillor, you wish to speak? Councillor McInnes, wish to speak? Anyone seeking leave to speak? If not, put the motion. Those in favour? That is carried. Thank you, councillors. And now, councillors, as we move forward to item 10, business arising from the minutes. Councillor McConnell, I believe you wish to address business arising.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Business arrived is from 18th July 2023. Item 10.8, inappropriate conduct matter, C-23-000041. At the end of that item, I did inform the chamber that I would be emailing the Deputy Premier regarding the decision or two decisions of council. Unfortunately, I was probably misguided because I would have thought that the Deputy Premier in his leadership role would have at least had or his office would have the common courtesy to at least reply to my email. The only thing I got back was the standard email reply that the email had been received, and although I emailed him again late last week, just requesting if he isn't going to look at it, just let me know. The office of the Deputy Premier again failed to even give me the common decency to at least reply and say that he wasn't going to look at the issue. The reason I wrote to the Premier was because under our investigation policy, section 3, it states any action taken is based on evidence, not speculation or suspicion. And decisions based on evidence require that the investigation should not be based on mere speculation or suspicion, but instead be based upon evidence material. The complainant offered evidence of a...
Sorry, Councillor. Councillor, I'm just going to... Councillor, I'm going to ask you to not continue down that path. I believe the resolution of that day did have a specific requirement. If you're not in a position to proceed with that today, we should deal with that conversation separately to progress to a future meeting. However, the matters you're now raising are best dealt with through another forum, and I urge you to, if you aren't going to continue in fulfilling the particular requirement for part of that resolution, then I'm going to urge you to pause there for today and to seek additional advice from the CEO for how to proceed for a future meeting.
Thank you for the interruption, Mr. Mayor. I'll continue on.
No, sorry, Councillor. No, Councillor. No, it is not appropriate to.
You don't know what I'm going to say, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor, quick question: are you going to comply with the terms of the resolution? Because that's the business arising from the meeting.
The problem we have, Mr. Mayor, is I have a integrity and principles issue because I'm being forced to admit wrongdoing that there is no evidence for.
Councillor, you are Councillor. Councillor,
to be able to express that within the meeting to the residents of the Scenic Rim.
No, Councillor, you're not at this time. You should have sought guidance before the meeting. The business arising was to comply with the terms of the resolution of the meeting. That's the business.
Doing that, Mr. Mayor.
Well, no, you're not. The wording was very specific in that resolution.
Oh, okay. I'm happy for you to give my answer then, Mr. Mayor, if you think I'm saying the wrong thing.
Well, Councillor, the wording of the resolution was quite specific. I note you have other matters you wish to raise. This is not an appropriate use of business arising to continue with at this time. And I am going to ask you to conclude your comments. If you are not going to satisfy the terms of the resolution, I'll ask you to not speak further in the manner you are and to seek further guidance around that. And I'll be happy to engage in that conversation and at a separate time. Thank you.
Okay, through the chair to the CEO, if I could.
I'll allow a question and then determine whether it's appropriate to respond.
To the CEO, given the fact that I'm being forced to admit something that I didn't do, what would be the ramifications if I failed to make the public admission?
Do you feel comfortable to answer the implications? Okay, CEO's prepared to answer.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would, and I'll go back to the governance person as well, but we would need to report back to the OIA that the admission has not been provided within the council meeting, and that is what was required by the rest of council at that point in time. Same thing, John.
So governance officer will also provide assistance.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And, Councillor, I just would like to point out that under the Local Government Act, Section 150L defines what is misconduct, and misconduct includes contravening an order of the local government. So the order that Council made in relation to the inappropriate conduct matter that we're talking about at the moment is an order for the purposes of 150L under the Local Government Act, which means a failure to comply with that order is likely to be treated as misconduct. And it would be referred to the OIA for their assessment.
Thank you for that answer. In regards to that, I have no option other than that I continue to make the council look dysfunctional. I'm forced to admit, therefore, under the motion of 10.8, that under section 150AH, oh no, that's the thing, I'm going to have to make a public admission that I have engaged in inappropriate conduct.
Thank you, Councillor.
Does that meet your needs there, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. I believe
Does that
that.
meet the chamber's needs? If anyone thinks I need to expand on my admission, please let me know. And unfortunately, I'll have to put my integrity and my principles.
Councillor, please stop. Please, Councillor. Councillor, please take a breath. You have complied with the requirement of that part of the resolution, and thank you for that. Councillors,
That is, I'll just make it known that it's under duress as well.
Councillor, that is not respectful of the process of council. I urge you to draw breath and show respect for the integrity of the chamber and the decision that was made by councillors.
The decision wasn't a majority decision, as with most things, Mr. Mayor. It was only on your vote.
Councillor, you are right out of order now with continuing down that path. I have been patient. I am urging you to stop pursuing that challenge of the proper and due process of council. You've complied with that part of the resolution. Councillors, there is another matter that's outstanding in regard to this. It's been brought to my attention that the wording of a separate resolution concerning the provision of support for legal costs and subsequent reimbursement is not able to be fulfilled due to administrative processes. It has not been possible to conform to the specific wording of that resolution. To avoid any concerns, I'm advising councillors that I'll be proposing a notice of motion for the next ordinary meeting to amend such resolutions accordingly.
Just a quick one, Mr. Mayor.
Is it a question, Councillor?
I'll have a conflict of interest on what you're talking about right now, won't I?
Sorry, yes, Councillor, you will, but you will when that comes forward. I believe, is your conflict of interest now? There's no decision being made, that's just information today,
Okay.
Councillor. So I think you are
Okay,
okay, but thank you for raising that concern. Thank you, councillors. No other business arising items to report back from CEO, from others. Then we move to the consideration of the business of the meeting. And we come to item 11.1 of today's agenda. And I turn to Councillor Chalk.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today I will introduce the report, which is 11.1 Australian Local Government Association, 29th National General Assembly. To give a little bit of background, the summary reads, the Australian Local Government Association, 29th National General Assembly was held from 13th to the 16th of June 2023 in Canberra. Due to a change in schedule, Councillor Christensen attended 2 days of the Assembly on 14th and 15th of June. We approved in our meeting prior to this the attendance of Deputy Mayor Jeff McConnell and to attend this Assembly. And since then, Deputy Mayor has given us a report about the Assembly and his belief that it was well worth his attendance. So I'll proceed now to a recommendation that Council retrospectively authorise the Mayor, Councillor Greg Christensen, to attend the Australian Local Government Association 29th National General Assembly held in Canberra on the 14th and 15th of June 2023.
Thank you. CK seconder. Councillor West, thank you. Any questions to the report? Councillor Hay?
Thank you, Chair. I only have one question. Given that the attendance was in the middle of June, is there a reason why it's taken so long to seek retrospective approval?
I refer that to the CEO.
Thank you, Councillor Hay. That was our mistake. So the officers have identified this and done this retrospectively. So it comes back to us.
Thank you. Perhaps if I just add a comment, by the way, the change of schedule, councillors, as you're aware, was in fact that there was a particular event, an invitation from the Governor-General for mayors of councils that had been significantly affected by a range of natural disasters over recent years to attend a dinner with at the residence in Canberra that coincided with the General Assembly, and to make value of that trip it was prudent to participate in parts of the conference, which particularly from my point of view included the involvement with peri-urban councils group from across Australia. Councillor McConnell's already reported back on some of the general proceedings, so I won't reiterate those. But the peri-urban councils discussion very much highlighted the similar challenges that they experience, that we experience being in close proximity to major population centres where there is significant investment in a whole range of infrastructure, that when people come into those peri-urban areas, they have expectation for the same services which aren't always able to be sustained, and that other levels of government are struggling to provide equitably to those areas outside of the major population centres. So it was a fruitful conversation, and certainly one that we have been invited to continue to participate in, along with a number of other councils from, particularly from southeast Queensland, who share similar profiles to ourselves. Thank you. Anyone else With any questions? If not, wish to speak to the motion, Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, just to say that it sounded like a worthwhile conference. And I'm glad that we sent Deputy Mayor and the Mayor along, and maybe it's something we can look at in the future for other attendees as councillors into the next term. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak against? Seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, we put the motion. Those in favour? Carried. Councillor McConnell?
Oh, can you not see me?
No, I can't.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Councillor McConnell, yes, I had my hand up.
All
Sorry.
right. Thank you. Thank you. So we don't have the video of you in the room, Councillor. We only have your audio. Thank you.
I didn't actually speak up the last motion to move the minutes. I only put my hand up, so that was a yes.
Okay, my apologies. Thank you. We'll get on track. Move to item 11.2, Disaster Waste Management Project, and I turn to Councillor Hay.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to introduce agenda item 11.2, Disaster Waste Management Project, and by way of background, I'll just read out the executive summary for the benefit of those listening online. Waste Services has completed the Disaster Waste Management Project funded by the Australian Government. The Waste Services Resilience Roadmap and Disaster Waste Management Plan developed through the project are designed to support the implementation of Council's waste management and resource recovery strategy, specifically the strategic outcome of efficient and effective management of operations through the following objectives: supporting the community to continue functioning in the event of a natural disaster, reducing health and safety risks for community, council employees and key contractors in managing service interruption and disaster waste, enhancing communication in relation to waste services in disasters, integrating disaster considerations into waste asset planning, and supporting the management of disaster waste in accordance with the waste hierarchy. The roadmap sets the strategic direction for Council to implement resilience building activities to improve waste management planning, services and infrastructure, while the DWMP will guide Council to manage disaster waste and service interruption impacts with the current complement of resources in the event of a disaster. Stakeholder engagement occurred through a range of avenues. This included community consultation on the draft roadmap. Feedback from stakeholders shaped both the roadmap and the DWMP. I'll now read the recommendation, which is in 3 parts. That 1. Council endorse the Waste Services Resilience Roadmap, which aims to enhance Council's ability to maintain the continuity of waste services during a disaster and better manage waste in the aftermath. 2. Council acknowledge the support and funding received from the Australian Government through the Preparing Australian Communities Program local stream, which enabled the development of the Disaster Waste Management Plan and the Waste Services Resilience Roadmap. And 3, Council delegate authority to the Chief Executive Officer to make minor grammatical and formatting changes to the Waste Services Resilience Roadmap if required after its adoption and prior to its publishing on Council's website for public access. Noting any such changes will be advised to councillors prior to publishing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hay. I seek a seconder. Councillor West, thank you. Councillors, any questions to the report? We are joined by the coordinator, Waste Services, Resource and Sustainability, if additional information is required. Councillor West.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question to our officer. I just wondered if you could just quickly tell us, and especially for those listening at home, what the major points of feedback were from the community and from our stakeholders during times of disaster, please.
Sorry, just you'll need to push the right-hand button. There.
Right-hand button, thank you very much. So the key considerations that were raised specifically by the community in relation to the community consultation one was in relation to management of green waste, which is understandable. So when we say green waste in this scenario, probably storm debris and the associated green waste that is generated from severe storms, is that something that a number of our residents have encountered. So our ability to manage that in terms of accessibility to facilities or alternative locations. So from a community perspective, the feedback that was provided was in relation to opening hours of facilities. In terms of how we would address that, we may look at alternative facilities, not just our own facilities, depending on the scenario. But that was probably the key, was in relation to accessibility to facilities in those times.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Enright.
Thank you, Mayor. Question through you to the CEO or as delegated. Refer to the report, which is very comprehensive. There are several tables. The first one's on page 45, and they list the various SWOT analysis of specific issues or concerns. And I note there's a reference number 1.1, 1.2, 1.4, 1.5, 1.6 and the likes. And I just couldn't see where that was referring to. So my question is what those points are.
Through Mr. Mayor, I'll hand over to Coordinator.
Thank you.
I believe that's referring to the Queensland framework, but I will actually confirm that.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Enright.
Second question, and it refers to the motion or perhaps something that's not included. So I note that the draft waste management plan is not endorsed. Is this as because that's an operational delivery from this, as opposed to a strategic direction from the motion?
So just in response to that, yes, the disaster waste management plan is operationally focused, so it is documenting the current processes that we have and formalising some additional aspects. So additional aspects may be additional communication, lines of communication, clarifying that with staff members. But it is an operationally focused document, so that's why it's not come for endorsement to this group. I may just also speak to the previous question, just clarifying that page 12 shows the recovery lines of priority that come from the Queensland framework, and that's what those references are, the numbers in the SWOT analysis.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Further questions? Councillor Hay.
As the mover of the recommendation, I'm not sure that I can technically ask a question, but
You can seek clarification.
yes.
Whatever.
Okay, I'll just have two very quick questions. The report acknowledges that the project cost was largely met by funding by the Department of Industry, Science, Energy and Resources and the Natural Recovery and Resilience Agency. The budget and financial implications were that there was $27,000 allocated in the budget, or made provision for in the budget for 2022-23, and the operational budget of the funds received of $82,962. Was the project brought in on budget, or the total cost is not mentioned as far as I can see anywhere in the report? So are those two figures the entirety of the amount that the project cost?
Councillor, apologies, I don't have those figures in front of me. I believe there was some additional in-kind contribution on council's behalf, but no additional materials and services cost.
Thank you. And I note that whilst there were 155 interactions, there were only 2 responses received for the public consultation or engagement. Do we have an indication of why there was such a low level of community engagement, given that this is a significant project?
So probably firstly, I would just reflect on the statement as to whether that is low or not. So yes, a low level of response, but 155 engagements and viewing of the documentation. I would consider the specific nature of the project that that's potentially not low, because while it is important for our whole community, whether disaster management is of interest to every member of our community, I would say I probably don't have the insight to that. But I do think that 155 views resulting in only 2 submissions probably suggests that what we have identified is generally aligned with those other viewers' expectations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? Any further?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor McConnell.
Yeah, thank you. Just to the, through the chair to the CEO, in regards to waste management, we're a small council surrounded by larger councils. Does this project incorporate any waste that may come from our surrounding councils to us in times of disaster?
Through Mr. Mayor, I'll hand over to the coordinator to answer that question.
Councillor McConnell, I would say it speaks to the waste likely to come to our facilities. So it doesn't specify the site of generation of waste. In terms of commercial waste, no, because it is targeting the municipal solid waste and the domestic and small scale commercial waste that we manage. So it is not looking beyond the scope of what we currently support in a disaster. If the scope of what we support in terms of waste services changes, then the roadmap and the plan would be reviewed to consider that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything further, councillor?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, anything further? If not, Councillor Hay, you wish to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to commend the officers on the comprehensive nature of the report provided for the project, and I think we've all witnessed for a very long time the effects of the natural disasters, particularly the flooding which occurred in northern New South Wales, and the aftermath of what appears to have been a lack of preparedness for an event of such magnitude. So I think it's particularly important that we have been proactive in getting this project up and running before we're in a similar set of circumstances, and hoping that they don't occur, obviously. But moving forward, I think this was most certainly a necessary project, and I commend the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak against? Seeking leave to speak additionally? Councillor West?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I will just to say this is wonderful to have this roadmap in existence. As has been mentioned, we all know what it's like after, excuse me, various disasters, whether it is flooding or fires or wind events, and there's always the drama of what to do with community with the waste. So this, I think, will be a great roadmap, and thank you for all the hard work that you've put into it.
Thank you. Anyone else seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, you wish to close, councillor?
No, thank you, Chair.
Then we put the motion. Those in favour? Councillor McConnell?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We move to item, and thank you, Coordinator, for joining us today and for that great piece of work to provide another platform for the region. We move to item 11.3 on page 102 of today's agenda, and I believe Councillor Enright, you'll introduce this matter.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to introduce the report, item 11.3, Inappropriate Conduct Matter, C-23-00048. Just a brief summary. On the 13th of February 2023, the Office of the Independent Assessor, OIA, referred a complaint against former councillor Derek Swanborough to council to investigate pursuant to section 150W1B of the Local Government Act 2009, advising of its reasonable suspicion that the complaint, if proven, involves inappropriate conduct. Council engaged an external investigator to conduct the investigation under Council's investigation policy. The investigator has completed the investigation and provided a report with findings and recommendations. Council is now required to determine if the former councillor has engaged in inappropriate conduct, and if so, the order to be imposed. I take the report and investigation report as being read. I now move the following motion.
Sorry, this is the point in time. I apologise, Councillor. I lost my reference point. Councillor Hay.
Thank you, Chair.
I'll take mine.
We'll try to let you on.
Thank you. I need to make a conflict of interest declaration in relation to this agenda item. I declare that I have possible declarable conflicts of interest in relation to agenda item 11.3, and these possible conflicts are, and there are three. One, former councillor Swanborough was openly supportive of my by-election campaign, and in that he encouraged me to nominate as a candidate and provided a photo of us together for use on Corflue signage, and stated publicly that, all things considered, Amanda is my choice. And two, that I was mentioned twice by name at page 15 of attachment 1 of the confidential attachments for this agenda item. And three, my email to all councillors sent following the ordinary meeting at which the stated words causing harm to third parties resulted in complaints from within council to the OIA. Whilst the complaints were dismissed, this was the sole basis of the OIA's current and very much live investigation underway, with a view to taking action to have me declared a vexatious complainant. A reasonable person may perceive that I may not be able to be impartial. Given that there are three separate matters, the cumulative effect warrants my voluntary exclusion from participating in this item. And given that I have already had one allegation of misconduct made to the OIA from within council in relation to my alleged failure to fully disclose potential conflicts, I make this declaration in the hope it will save someone the angst of making a complaint to the OIA that I did not fully disclose potential conflicts. And I state that I will now leave the meeting room and take no part in the decision or the vote on this matter. I also believe that if anyone is aware of any potential conflicts I may have omitted, you are obliged to raise these now rather than save them up for an OIA complaint. Thank you.
Thank you for your declaration, Councillor, and we note that you're departing. You've chosen to depart for this matter. Apologies, councillors, that was my distraction with some of the other material. Councillor Enright, would you continue, please?
Thank you, Mayor. I now move the motion that Council note receipt of this Councillor Complaint Investigation Report, number 1. 2, that Council note the findings of this investigation that during his term as a councillor with Scenic Regional Council, Councillor Derek Swanborough engaged in inappropriate conduct as defined under section 150K 1A of the Local Government Act 2009.
Mr. Mayor, can I interject for a second?
Paul, sorry, councillor, do you have a question?
Yeah. Are we moving the motion now before we've discussed any of the issues? We usually, in inappropriate conduct, discuss the issues and then move the motion at the end, don't we?
Councillor Enright is introducing the matter, and to open that conversation in the revised standing orders, it is my understanding that we need a motion to be able to commence that discussion. Is the way we've restructured the standing orders, and that was part of the education that we've gone through around the revised standing orders. So,
Okay, thank you.
we need a motion to be able to commence that discussion. Sorry, Councillor Enright, if you just continue.
I will commence that point 2 again from the start. Point 2, that council note the findings of this investigation, that during his term as a councillor with Scenic Regional Council, Councillor Derek Swanborough engaged in inappropriate conduct as defined under section 150K 1A of the Local Government Act 2009 through his actions on at least 9 occasions in using his personal email account for the conduct of council business, such actions being a breach of Standard of Behaviour 1.3 listed in the Code of Conduct for Councillors in Queensland. Item 3, that pursuant to section 150AG1 and 150AG2 and 150AH1B and 150AH2 of the Local Government Act 2009, the Council make the following orders. A. An order reprimanding former Councillor Swanborough for his conduct.
I will
B.
come in here, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, pause. Sorry, just pause. Councillor Enright, if you could just pause. Councillor McConnell, yes?
We should only be dealing with the first matter. We shouldn't be going on to orders imposed just yet because they haven't been decided.
So, Councillor, thank you for raising the question. Let me, Councillor Enright, in proposing the motion that you're introducing, are you prepared to consider a motion in 2 parts that might in fact have a motion that deals with parts 1 and 2, and then depending on how that progresses to deal with other parts?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think that's probably a good way forward.
Okay, so for clarity, that is then the motion completes with that wording in the behaviour 1.3 listed in the Code of Conduct for Councillors in Queensland is the end.
Another quick one, if I can, Mr. Mayor, with your indulgence, can I get Sharon to email me that motion so I can read it?
It's on page 8 of the investigation.
So, Councillor, you do have access to that in the confidential material.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, to the CEO.
Through Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, it's on page 8 under recommendations 3 in the actual investigators report.
Thank you. So moved. Need a seconder. I will second then for the purposes of letting this continue to discussion, councillors. Sorry. Yeah. So now, councillors, is the time, if there are questions, noting that councillors have access to the confidential materials, and we need to be mindful of not compromising aspects of that. It is open then for questions to the motion, and we will seek guidance through the CEO to assist.
And
Councillor
again, I'm going to
McConnell?
throw a spanner in the works this there.
Yes,
I
Councillor.
believe Councillor Hay used a perceivable conflict of interest, not a declarable or a prescribed in her wording. Weren't we supposed to decide that first?
Councillor, she went on to the she did describe them as potential and used the word declarables. Then she went on to voluntarily remove herself from the room. So she, whilst she had declared them as potential.
I couldn't quite make out some of that. So, all good.
Okay, thank you. So now, any questions noting the material in the report? Any? So if you're voting on those two, then that one. Okay. Yeah. So
I can't hear what the CEO is saying.
So, no, yeah, sorry, apologies to those watching. The CEO's, just because of this, the nature of this matter, he's just ensuring I have good governance advice for the management of the matter in the room. If you just indulge me for a moment, I'll just switch the microphone off and confirm that before we proceed.
So, true, if the councillor's happy to, I know you did two, but if you can do 1, 2, and then come back to 3. Does that make sense?
The CEO is providing some governance advice to assist us, that recommending that we actually withdraw the current motion and seek the indulgence of the mover and seconder, and allow the mover to resubmit the motions, as there are a number of individual dot points, to deal with them one at a time as motions. One as a motion, then, yeah. Okay. Are the mover and seconder comfortable with that approach? Okay. Thank you. Sorry, yes. Sorry, I thought I had your hand in my mind. You're a bit behind me. I'm comfortable, and the mover's comfortable. So, Councillor Enright, I'm back to you for point 1.
Thank you, Mayor. I now move the motion that Council note receipt of this councillor complaint investigation report.
Seek a seconder. Try that again. We have no.
I'm happy to second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor West. That's moved Councillor Enright, seconded Councillor West for the first motion. Any questions to that, councillors?
Can you just read out what the motion was again?
The motion is that council note receipt of this councillor complaint investigation report.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Okay?
Yes.
Okay, if there's no discussion, you wish to speak to the motion, councillor?
No, thank you, Mayor. No.
Not required. Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone wishing to speak additionally? Put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you.
Councillor McConnell, yes.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Enright, in your hands again.
Thank you, Mayor. I now move the motion that Council note the findings of this investigation, that during his term as a councillor with Scenic Rim Regional Council, Councillor Derek Swanborough engaged in inappropriate conduct as defined under section 150K1A of the Local Government Act 2009 through his actions on at least 9 occasions in using his personal email account for conduct of council business, such actions being a breach of Standard of Behaviour 1.3 listed in the Code of Conduct for Councillors in Queensland.
Thank you, councillor. I seek a seconder. Councillor West, thank you. Further questions to this matter? Councillor McConnell, you heard the wording of this motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. It doesn't do anything, though. We're only noting.
Correct, councillor. Are there any questions to
To the findings? Because we're only noting the findings. Are we discussing the findings or just noting them?
So at the moment, you're open to question, if you questions that are relevant to the motion, councillor. I need to be careful how far I'm guiding it.
The motion is only...
Sorry, just a moment.
Noting findings.
Councillor, I'm happy to seek additional guidance for you from the CEO.
Sorry, Deputy Mayor, I'll just go to the governance person.
Thank you, CEO. I think the motion needs to show the decision of council in relation to whether or not the former councillor has engaged in inappropriate conduct, not just noting, because otherwise we don't.
If we go to...
Yeah.
Exactly, if we go to the findings or the motion for my last incident, it should basically be the same, except changing my name for Councillor Swanborough's name.
Thank you for your thank you for your advice, council. I'm not sure whether you fully heard the governance advice, but councillors, if you need some time for clarity, to contemplate this, to think about the wording for this motion, councillor, and whether you're prepared to entertain an amendment or again withdraw and resubmit. If you wish to have some time to consider that, I could call a brief adjournment for you to just be able to draw your breath to do that.
Thank you, Mayor. That'd be appreciated.
Councillors, can we just then adjourn? And for those in the gallery, I expect this to be no longer than 5 minutes to continue. Thank you. We're adjourned. Councillor Councillors, we are now back on in open session from that adjournment. Thank you to the gallery for your patience. We are working our way through some challenging waters at the moment, and I therefore return to Councillor Enright, and possibly with the support of Councillor West. Councillor, you wish to remove the current motion?
Thank you, Mayor. On advice from governance during the adjournment, I wish to withdraw this previous motion.
Thank you. Is the seconder happy with that?
Yes, I'm happy with that, yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Seconder is happy. Councillor, you wish to propose a further motion?
Thank you, Mayor. That council decide that during his term as a councillor with the Scenic Rim Regional Council, Councillor Derek Swanborough engaged in inappropriate conduct as defined under section 150K1A of the Local Government Act 2009 through his actions on at least 9 occasions in using his personal email account for the conduct of council business, such actions being a breach of Standard of Behaviour 1.3 listed in the Code of Conduct for Councillors in Queensland.
Thank you, Councillor. I seek a seconder.
I'm happy to second that.
Thank you, Councillor West. Now,
Mr. Mayor, can I get you to read out the motion for me?
I shall, Councillor, that council decide that during his term as a councillor with Scenic Rim Regional Council, Councillor Derek Swanborough engaged in inappropriate conduct as defined under section 150K1A of the Local Government Act 2009 through his actions on at least 9 occasions in using his personal email account for the conduct of council business, such actions being a breach of Standard of Behaviour 1.3 listed in the Code of Conduct for Councillors in Queensland.
Would the mover be open to including one word, which is former councillor?
Former councillor in front of Councillor Derek Swanborough. It's during his term. I think it technically, Councillor McConnell, I think the Councillor Enright's comfortable with the wording as it is because the references do relate to when he was a serving councillor, and there are other potential motions which will identify the change of that status.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or clarifications or discussion to
Yes.
Councillor McConnell?
If just in relation to his use of his personal email, some of those were for legal reasons to identities or government identities that promote confidentiality between the parties. Is there anything in there that requires a councillor, if they're making a complaint, say against the Scenic Rim Council from them not using his council email address on although it may be a misguided perception that council could then see his private emails to that separate government entity.
Councillor, we're having a little trouble hearing you, but if I can just confirm, your question goes to that on some of the occasions identified, the councillor has in the evidence has identified that he was pursuing communications with specific external government bodies that he felt justified that independent approach from a separate email.
Correct.
I will turn to the CEO. I know the investigation is complete. I'm not sure whether this CEO is able to assist.
Sorry, through Mr Mayor, the investigation is complete, and it's the role of councillors to either decide to accept the investigation and provide those recommendations, not to go back and re-examine the evidence within in the report put forward by the investigator.
Thank you, CEO, for that advice. Councillor, I'm not sure that satisfies your query, but it clarifies.
No, it doesn't. I'm actually not happy with that advice, Mr Mayor, because we should be questioning things. We should not be taking for granted things that come to us in reports. We're entitled to question things that come via reports, and this is purely a report. So I find that we must accept everything in the report and not question it to be concerning.
So, Councillor, I note your position. I believe the aspects, my observation, when I read the investigation report, those aspects were considered by the investigator in their deliberations to reach the findings they did.
Yeah, but we can still question it as a group. I'm supposed to be having discussion on the issue.
Well, I guess what discussion do you want to have? I'm just simply referring that the investigator has provided the body of information for us to consider, and that has included information and perspectives from the councillor and the investigator's consideration of those responses. So your question, I'm not sure anyone here can assist you with an answer to your question beyond observing that there was a perspective for some of the instances that was not accepted by the investigator, and the investigator formed on the body of evidence a particular perspective. That's all I read from the report.
And I'm just saying that I think in that regard it's flawed, because we know that with advice from the department in regards to corresponding as a councillor with your legal team, I'm trying to keep it generic, with your legal team, that there are incidences where that would not be seen to be a breach because it is legal confidentiality between the legal team and yourself. Now, given the level of these government entities and in their own wordings, confidentiality is enshrined in being able to go forward to these entities. The use of a private email to correspond with those may be warranted.
I'm going to seek some advice from the CEO.
I'm only talking about the emails sent to these entities, not to all of the emails that come forward.
You're talking to a small part of the list, I understand, but I'm not sure, CEO, whether you can assist with further advice.
Through Mr. Mayor, the officers are not the authors of this report. So the author of this report is obviously the independent investigator. It's important not to go back and try and and it's encouraged by the department not to go back and become, inverted commas, judge and jury on what's been outlined by the investigator. What needs to be here is a higher order position that says, based on the probabilities, is there a sanction that needs to be applied, or is there no sanction that needs to be applied? In relation to your feedback with regard to emailing different people, remember the second component of that, and the second component is emailing on council business. So it's not just emailing a specific representative from a different organisation and doing that. It's about the carriage of council business. That's the important component that is tied in with where those emails go. I don't know if the governance specialist wishes to add to that.
Thank you, CEO. All I'll add is that there's 9 emails that are subject to this particular determination today, and you can see in the investigation report the various topics and the persons or recipients of those emails. So if that assists you in determining the matter overall, they're in there in the investigation report.
Were you able to hear that?
Thank you. Just to comment back on what the CEO said, I disagree with what he said about not contradicting the report, because as a council already, I think we've already twice we have sent back a report, an investigation report, as being substandard, and we've actually not used, or we've actually said to the council officers not to use that investigation firm again. So I don't believe in not questioning what was written in the report. I believe we should be. I think some of these emails, although misguided, could probably warrant your perception that you should be probably not using your council email to then make a accusation to a separate government body about the very entity that you work for, or that your email could be accessed from. So that's all I'm saying.
So, Councillor, are you mooting a motion to?
No change. I'm just making discussion.
No. I'm just trying to understand. That is, I noted your comments about some prior reports and the adequacy thereof. Is there a concern that this report didn't measure up? If that was a matter, that would be a different consideration for us today. But this is that's why I was exploring your comments a bit. There's a fair body of detail being addressed from my perspective, and I note your sharing of those views, and that there may be some of these occasions that could have been regarded differently. Perhaps if they were matters in isolation, I think might have been was that where your head was at? Matters in isolation on their own may have received a different interpretation. And
you are correct, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Yes. So back to so are there any other points to raise on this before I return to the Speaker? Councillor Chalk.
Well, I'll just go back to my point about adding the at least on 9 occasions, because we've tied into this motion now that it has to be a minimum of 9 occasions, rather than that simply he used a personal email account to conduct council business. So now it's dependent on the fact that it's on at least 9 occasions. So if Jeff is correct in what his assertion is, that there is instances listed in this report that may be okay, then now our motion will be thrown out the window, I believe.
I'm not sure of that, but I'm CEO. I'm not sure whether there's any. I believe.
Sorry, through Mr. Mayor, it's not for me, it's for the mover of the motion.
Yeah. Well, firstly, before I just want to test the validity of the comment before the mover considers it. The matter before us identifies that number of occasions and describes them. The comment was, I think, whether some of them could be questioned. I don't believe that puts at risk the motion. Councillor Enright, are you still comfortable with the wording of your motion?
Thank you, Mayor, I am, because the preceding motion talks about the receipt of the investigation report. We then move on to the outcome of that investigation report, which outlines some of the details. It doesn't mean that this becomes a threshold for this or any other future
Thank you.
item.
Thank you, Councillor. I think
Can we remove the words at least?
Sorry. Through Mr. Mayor, it's an option to meet everyone's expectations by removing the words "at least." That way there's no setting of a benchmark, etc. Councillor Chalk, it simply says, that, remove those two words and you've got 9.
perhaps in trying to keep with the elements of this discussion, my interpretation of the report, it was indicating the 9 occasions as evidence of a pattern, which I think overlaps a bit with some of your earlier comments, Councillor McConnell, that whether or not each instance on its own might have had a different conversation as a pattern is what I thought the report really was focusing towards. But over to you, Councillor Enright, do you want to consider the removal of the words "at least"?
Mayor, I think to my previous point, we've acknowledged the investigation report. We have to decide. We have to decide on this matter as a result of the outcome of the investigation report. I'm believing that the words "at least" were probably there to determine that there may be other occasions, but that doesn't mean that we had to go exploring further, or the investigator doesn't need to explore further. I think it's important that those at least 9 occasions were the ones that were identified in the investigation, and given that we are to make a decision on the outcomes of the report, I'm happy to leave those words in as outlined by the investigator.
Thank you, Councillor.
Could you just give me a summary of that, Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Enright is happy to stay with the wording that's there.
Okay.
That's the summary. So, if any further discussion?
So, could I get someone to just read out the motion again, please?
I'll read it to allow Councillor Enright to prepare his vocal cords. That council decide that during his term as a councillor with Scenic Rim Regional Council, Councillor Derek Swamber engaged in inappropriate conduct as defined under section 150K1A of the Local Government Act 2009 through his actions on at least 9 occasions in using his personal email account for the conduct of council business, such actions being a breach of Standard of Behaviour 1.3 listed in the Code of Conduct for Councillors in Queensland.
So, thank you. How many occasions in the report does it state? So,
Sorry, could you repeat that?
we only work on hard evidence, not speculation. So, they only found evidence of 9 times, I believe. Councillor Enright? The report says that they only found 9 times in the report.
The outcomes of the report outlined at least 9 occasions, as I mentioned earlier. That may not have been totally exhaustive, but for the benefit of determining an outcome, the investigator has identified at least 9 occasions.
Councillor McGuinness.
Yes, I think the point is here, Mayor, there's an insinuation by having at least 9 occasions that there's possibly more than that, and I think that's the point being made. It doesn't come into my mind in agreeing or disagreeing with this, whether the word's there or not, but there is an insinuation in my mind.
To try to help move that impasse and barring proposing amendments, Councillor Enright, just noting some of those comments, would you consider through his actions on 9 confirmed occasions?
No, I'm not happy with that either. Because, as I just stated, going to an outside body that states that they have a confidentiality thing, a confidentiality clause, and they espouse confidentiality using your council email does not keep that confidentiality between 2 parties. I'm happy if it just said I'm happy if it just said he used his personal email address to conduct council business. I don't see the reason why we have to specify 9 times. There's no need to say 9 times because I don't agree with 9 times. And there's no evidence for 9 times.
So are you proposing an amendment to the motion? We've debated this around. You're either proposing an amendment, Councillor Enright's comfortable with the words that he has there, and is prepared to speak to his motion. We've gone round this enough times now. I've tried to propose a version that would move past it, but in the absence of anything else, Councillor Enright's comfortable to move forward.
Yeah, I'm happy to remove the words "at least."
Within your
And 9?
No, happy to remove the words "at least" because it's been identified in the report about 9 occasions.
I'll remove that. Okay. Thank you, Councillor. The seconder, happy with that?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Councillor, you wish to proceed? Okay. Councillor, you wish to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mayor. This is not an easy process, but it is a process that is very much prescribed by legislation, where we need to go through a process of, once the OIA has instructed council to, if they believe that there is a case for further investigation of potential inappropriate conduct, then the process that is determined by legislation is that we must go through the investigation process by an independent investigator and then determine the outcome as provided following that investigation. And I believe this is the process that we have carried out, and I believe that is an appropriate way forward to deal with this particular case.
Thank you, Councillor. Is anyone speaking against? Seeking leave to speak additionally?
I will speak additionally, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor McConnell?
It is an unfortunate situation we're in, and we seem to be doing it way too much over this term. I will be supporting the motion as it goes. I do believe that former Councillor Swanborough did use his private email address to conduct council business, which in the black and white is against the Act. I do believe some of the occasions that he used it was warranted in regards to keeping confidentiality between himself and a government entity. But at the end of the day, he still used that private email for other occasions that obviously goes against what we all know to be correct. So I will be supporting the motion, and hopefully we'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, you wish to close, Councillor? No. Then we put the motion. Those in favour?
Councillor McConnell, yes.
That's carried unanimously. Councillors, there's a bit more material here. I'm conscious we've run significantly past our normal break time, and that's been quite an absorbing period of discussion. So I'm going to, at 10:51, propose that we adjourn for 20 minutes and we return, well, not quite 20 minutes, we'll return at 10 past 11. And to those in the gallery, please take the time to refresh, and at 11:10 we will resume. We are adjourned. Thank you. Councillor McConnell. Welcome back, councillors, executive and those joining us in the digital gallery. We continue with the consideration of matter 11.3 on today's agenda, and Councillor Enright, we're in your hands again.
Thank you, Mayor. I now move that that pursuant to section 150 AG 1 and 150 AG 2 and 150 AH 1B and 150 AH 2 of the Local Government Act 2009, the Council make the following orders. A. An order reprimanding former Councillor Swanborough for the conduct. B. An order that former Councillor Swanborough reimburse the Council for 100% of the costs arising from this investigation into the Councillor's inappropriate conduct. 2. That Council note the investigation costs paid to Ray Burton Consulting to the amount of $4,950 excluding GST.
Thank you, Councillor. Again, seek a seconder at this time.
I'm happy to second that.
Thank you, Councillor West. Discussion to this motion? Questions?
Not really a question, Mr. Mayor, but on the vote, can we please separate the two orders?
You're asking for this to be dealt with as two separate motions, Councillor?
Just the orders. So 3A and 3B is two separate votes, please, Mr. Mayor.
And they would need to be dealt with as two separate motions to do that is, I guess, my from a process point of view. So I'm just now seeking guidance from the mover and then the seconder, their appetite to consider that approach.
As always, Mayor, happy to assist.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Knight. So in that regard then, you're prepared to withdraw the current motion with the support of the seconder and resubmit this as two separate motions. A motion, so I believe you'll need to reintroduce the first part of this motion down to the end of point A of what had previously been introduced, and then then we'll deal with that and then deal with the second motion.
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that that pursuant to section 150 AG 1 and 150 AG 2 and 150 AH 1B and 150 AH 2 of the Local Government Act 2009, the Council make the following orders. Order A, and no A, without the A, an order reprimanding, an order that reprimand, an order reprimanding former Councillor Swanborough for the conduct.
So I just think for clarity, make the following order, take out the that and order, it's the following order reprimanding. Yes. Former. I think that's what was said. Yeah. Did you hear that, Councillor McConnell? Would you like me to read that out?
No, I'm happy now that Councillor Enright has the doing. I'm hearing you clear.
Good. That's excellent. Thank you. Okay, now I need a seconder again for that. Councillor West, thank you. Any further questions to this motion? To be a little pedantic, I would just, given that we've changed the structure of this, I just seek guidance whether all of those sections are relevant to this order.
Sorry. Through Mr. Mayor, can we just reverse back on the terminology in yours there? It's just whether the governance person can make a better representation of that.
Are you seeking to reframe that wording?
Councillor, the council made the following order reprimanding.
So I had,
It's,
to get it now, I had,
No, it doesn't.
No.
It would be make in order. Would it be make in order?
sorry, sorry, make the following order, sorry,
To issue a reprimand to former, correct, sorry about that.
Mover. Thank you. You still comfortable with that? Oh, too many voices on. Try again.
sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy with that minor adjustment for better clarity.
Thank you. Did you catch that,
Yep.
Councillor Con? Yep. Good. Thank you.
Happy with the reception is there now.
Good. Thank you. Councillor West, you're comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with that.
Thank you. We continue on then with that tweaked wording. Any further questions? Wish to speak to the motion, Councillor?
Thank you, Mayor. I will return to my previous statements that we are going through the process. The investigator has come forward with a recommendation, and it's our duty as council to make a determination on this. I believe this is the correct process to follow at this point.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone seeking leave to speak additionally?
I will speak additionally, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McConnell.
Thank you. I will speak in favour of the motion. I think a reprimand for however misguided his thought process was on using his private email address was still wrong under the black and white letter of the law. So I think a reprimand to former councillor Swanborough for his conduct is appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McConnell. Anyone else seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, we wish to close it all. Councillor Wright, we put the motion. Those in favour?
Councillor McConnell, yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We now move back to Councillor Enright for a further motion.
Thank you, Mayor. That pursuant to section 150 AG1 and 150 AG2 and 150 AH1B and 150 AH2 of the Local Government Act, where are we?
2009.
2009. Just looking at that. The council make the following order: that Councillor Swanborough reimburse the council for 100% of the cost arising from this investigation into councillors' inappropriate conduct, into the councillors' inappropriate conduct.
Thank you, councillor.
Okay. Slight amendment. Can we add former? He's no longer a councillor.
So it wasn't read out, but it has carried forward, picked up that wording, and the former councillor is in there. Okay, thank you. Zico seconder to let us proceed to the floor. Thank you, Councillor West. It's a matter of process to let it get to the discussion. Thank you. Now, questions, firstly, or discussion?
Can Councillor Enright elaborate why 100% of the costs?
Yes, again, I'll refer back to the outcome of the investigator's report and to the point that was raised regularly in the previous item about the number of times that the former councillor used his personal email account. In my view, there's no doubt that this outcome of the investigation proved that that was inappropriate conduct, and that the cost of $4,950 excluding GST paid to the consultant should be borne by the former councillor, because ratepayers shouldn't have to pay the cost attributed to the investigator when it is a black and white issue regarding the use of private emails.
Thank you.
Okay. Further discussion? Sorry. Councillor Enright, sorry, just a second, Councillor Guinness.
Mayor, I touched on it earlier, but we've now broken up the segments of the orders. What is relevant is the amount that is that involved the investigation. So I could add in the previous paragraph that I have, or I could just put in an amount in the.
Councillor, you can seek to amend your motion or add to your motion if you wish to, or let that matter come forward as a separate motion for noting. It may make sense to have it included in here. Try go. Back to you, Councillor Enright.
Okay, so point 2. That council note the investigation costs paid to Ray Burton Consulting to the amount of $4,950, excluding GST.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McInnes, you're happy with that inclusion, Councillor West?
I am at this stage.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Councillor McInnes?
Yes, Mayor, I've got an issue with the 100% of costs, and if we look down further in one of the other recommendations, it's about finding of where the rules suggest that if there's findings of 3 inappropriate conduct occasions against councillor in a 12-month period, this goes towards that, and it was one part that Councillor Enright didn't suggest, and I think given that how some of those former issues unfolded and our advice after that, I think in hindsight it was we didn't act properly in that period of time, and so I can't accept that is yeah, we shouldn't be taking, or believe we shouldn't be taking that into account in determining the percentage of costs.
I'd like to move an amendment, please, Mr. Mayor.
Happy to hear a proposed amendment.
The amendment would be under 1, I think it is, an order that former councillor Councillor Swammer reimbursed the council for $500 of the cost arising from this investigation.
You said $500.
So replacing the 100% with $500.
So you're proposing a fixed amount, councillor?
Yes.
Okay. Any seconder for that motion or that amendment? I don't. Yes, Councillor McGuinness.
Mayor, could I suggest, just for consistency, that Councillor McConnell might want to say 10% rather than a fixed amount, which virtually is the same dollars.
Councillor McConnell, did you hear that?
I'm happy to take that on board and change my amendment to 10%, please, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Are you seconding that, Councillor McGuinness?
I will, just for debating purposes. Thanks, Mayor. I will second it.
Thank you. So, discussion to the amendment. Councillors, before we, I'm firstly, are you comfortable to accept the amendment, or do you wish it to be taken through the floor through the mover?
Mayor, I'd like to debate the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor. I didn't want to presume that. Thank you. So, open the floor. Any now discussion to this before we move to speaking for. I would seek to ask a question to you, Councillor McConnell. Given the public body of the report refers to a number of prior matters that were referenced against some advice we received from the OAA, and that we took, I think, the advice of the lesser amount on each occasion at 30% as a reference for costs. I wish to understand why what would give rise to 10% being consideration. I'm trying to understand the mitigations that would suggest that.
As we've already discussed in previous occasions, those are only guidelines, not recommendations. They're not set in stone. They're only guidelines. And I think we've already heard before in issuing this type of order. And that's all I'll say. I'll wait for debate before I go through it. I'll just be repeating myself.
Thank you. Councillors, any other questions? Okay, then I think move forward. You wish to speak to your amendment, Councillor McConnell?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't believe 100% cost is appropriate for this. I acknowledge the fact that former Councillor Swammer at times and other incidents, findings of inappropriate conduct. However, interspersed across the 3 years. I'd also note that Councillor Swammer has over, I think, over 70 complaints against him through the OIA. This would have affected his mental state in the fact that he would have perceived that everyone in council was against him and could have forced him to not trust the council, and I think that needs to be taken into account, the more than 70 occasions. And I don't think an order of 100% is appropriate in this, and I think a 10% would be appropriate finding for former Councillor Swanborough. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, anyone wishing to speak against? Councillor Enright?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I would certainly like to speak against 10%. 10% of the 4,950 plus GST is such a minor amount. The cost to administer that amount would probably cost council more than the value of the cost reimbursement. The cost of the investigation at 4,950 plus GST is only the cost of the investigator. This does not include any of the time that our officers have put into this and many other matters. So we really need to factor the cost to the organisation, and this particular matter required considerable time of officers, and we need to consider that as a cost that we have already incurred. I would, in my original motion, consider a revised amount, but for this amendment, I cannot support the 10% suggested.
Thank you, Councillor. Another speaker for? Councillor Chor? For the amendment. Councillor speaker for the amendment. Sorry. So, Councillor McInnes?
Yes, Mayor, in view of some of the debate taking place here and comments made, I would like to foreshadow an amendment, the 30% figure. I agree with you, Mayor, in what your comments there. I think that's a more appropriate line, but I seconded the motion just for debate purposes, and I think that's a more appropriate figure, 30%.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else wishing to speak against the amendment? Just getting my head into the right sequence. Speaking against the amendment, speaking for the amendment, speaking against the amendment.
Yeah, I'll speak against the amendment, and I'll agree with Councillor McGuinness's assertion, and I'll be foreshadowing supporting that motion of 30%.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak for the amendment? Anyone else seeking to speak against the amendment? I will just speak to the amendment in the context of the factors that we have in considering how to remedy a situation include levels of cooperation within the investigation and awareness or realisation are also matters to take into consideration for what is a reasonable outcome, as well as that prior pattern of other matters. So I certainly would be concerned that 10% does not give the proper balance of those considerations for this matter. And I can't support that amendment. Anyone else seeking leave to speak? Councillor McConnell, you wish to close?
Yeah, only to say that appreciate the comments made, but I still believe that 100% and even 30% is excessive. Given the fact, as I said, he had more than 70 plus complaints in 3 years, and only, I believe, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, 4 findings of inappropriate conduct out of that 70 plus complaints would have an effect mentally to suggest to the councillor that he was being targeted and that some of the emails that he did use private email account for could have been appropriate. So, thank you.
Thank you, councillor. We put the amendment to the vote. Those in favour?
Councillor McConnell, yes.
Okay. And those against? The amendment is defeated. I think Councillor West.
Sorry, I did. Yes, I did. I'm so sorry.
Councillor West may have. It hasn't affected the outcome.
So,
Councillor,
no, I'm happy for the 30%. Sorry.
So I think Councillor West. So did you ask for a division, Councillor McConnell? Sorry.
No, yes, okay, Mr Mayor, thank you.
Thanks. Yep. So those in
My apologies.
favour on this occasion were divisions 2 and 3, Councillor McConnell and West. Those against Mayor divisions 4, 5 and 6. So the amendment is defeated. And we are back to the consideration of the floor. Councillor McInnes, you foreshadowed a different amendment.
Yes, Mayor, as said in the debate a few minutes ago, I believe I would like that changed, my amendment to read that former councillor Swanberg reimburse the council for 30% of the costs arising from this investigation into the councillor's inappropriate conduct. I move that amendment.
I propose that amendment. Thank you. I seek a seconder, Councillor Chalk. Any further questions? We've had some discussion around the principles of this. It's now the quantum. If not, we move straight to you. Wish to speak to your amendment, Councillor McGuinness?
No, only that it's a more appropriate figure, I believe, than either 100% or 10%, and I think it's the correct figure in my humble opinion.
Thank you. Councillor, anyone wishing to speak against? Councillor Enright?
Mayor, I will speak against the quantum. I'm of the belief that 50% would be more appropriate, and would reluctantly not support this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor.
Sorry, I missed what you said at the end. Was he supporting or not?
No, so Councillor Enright, just to assist with the audibility, Councillor Enright spoke against this amendment, indicating that he would consider something with a different number, slightly larger, at a 50%, and that he would reluctantly vote against this. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Enright, you had something further to add?
Would the mover of the amendment consider 50%?
No, I wouldn't, Councillor Enright. I believe 30%, 33% to be the correct figure.
We'll stick with the 30% and let's not come to points in between. Thank you, Councillor, for that query. Anyone else seeking to speak for the amendment? Anyone else seeking leave to speak or seeking leave to speak against the amendment? Councillors, I think this is a vexed question, and it is one of the most uncomfortable parts of what we do. All I reference to is the considerations around levels of cooperation within this matter, and the awareness of the other validated matters that are in the public report that we have to consider, and the levels of awareness that were demonstrated through awareness or not awareness that were demonstrated in the investigation concerning this behaviour. It makes it difficult to adopt the lesser amounts, and whilst the prior amounts were at 30%, I note that in the guidelines, and I note to Councillor McCollum's the guidelines that we we were provided with did have indications of that having some subsequent tiers to it to consider, rather than staying at the one level. However, we have an amendment before us to consider. Anyone else seeking leave to speak? If not, Councillor McGuinness, you wish to speak to close?
Yeah, just one final comment and reiterating what we said before. I think it was proved from some of the earlier findings against former Councillor Swanborough that we didn't follow correct procedures there, and I believe that has to be taken into account. It's about having three defined, three inappropriate conduct findings against a councillor in a 12-month period. I think there's a big question mark over some of the others, so I believe 30% is the right figure.
Okay, we put the amendment to that the quantum be 30%. Those in favour? Councillor McConnell, where are you?
Councillor McConnell, yes.
Okay, those against? The amendment is carried. So I now come back to the mover. You're still happy to progress with the motion, noting that amendment, Councillor?
Yes, Mayor. Happy to take the collective wisdom of the members of the chamber.
Councillor West, you're happy to continue as a seconder. Now we return to the original motion with the inclusion of that amendment from 100% to 30%. Were we speaking to and against? No, we haven't started yet.
Yeah, because we've had mover and seconder, so no problem at all.
No.
Now got the amendment.
Yep.
So now
I'm
it's
just
the
confirming we
motion
hadn't
for
started
motion.
speaking to. I thought we had commenced speaking to.
Oh,
But Councillor Enright, I'll return to you now that it's an amended motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with previous comments that this is a particularly difficult part of this process that is a prescribed process. However, we as council are elected to speak for all of and represent the members of our community. One of those responsibilities is the sustainability of our region, which is very much about understanding where our funds are spent. I think, given the guidelines that are provided by the Office of Independent Assessor, it is appropriate that we progress with some cost reimbursement for the cost outlined in this matter.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone wishing to speak against? Seeking leave to speak additionally?
I will speak additionally, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McConnell.
Thank you. I still believe the 30% is excessive for this. Yes, agree with Councillor there that have been exuberant over the last year. I don't think that sort of comment warrants more than it should be, so I won't be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else seeking leave to speak additionally? Wish to close, Councillor? Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to mention, look, this is a particularly difficult situation, and these situations are not ones that we want to be in. It's hard to agree, and I think we have struck a happy medium with the 30%. And given the fact that the councillor isn't able to be in the room, where we could perhaps have asked for a public apology or something of that sort, we're not able to do that. So I'm happy to support.
Thank you. Apologies, and just a bit of guidance there. Thank you. Councillor, you wish to close? We put the motion. Those in favour? Those against?
Councillor McConnell, no.
The motion's carried.
Division, please, Mr. Mayor.
Those in favour, Mayor, Division 3, 4, 5 and 6. Those against, Division 2. Okay. We back in your hands, Councillor Enright.
Thank you, Mayor. The next part of this process, I move that, pursuant to Section 3 of Council's investigation policy, Council note that Mr Swanborough has been provided a copy of the investigator's report to Council and was provided the opportunity to put his case in writing, such response to be included with the investigation report to the Council as part of the meeting agenda.
Just for a tense perspective, that such response was included, not included, wasn't, did not respond. So I'm just trying to.
Such response be included.
Can I suggest to put his case in writing for such response to be included? Okay. Okay.
Can I just seek governance advice?
Ordinary meeting agenda. So just for those in the gallery, we're just ensuring we've got clarity about the intent of the wording.
In writing, such response be included in the investigation. We never got a response.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification.
You've got the clarification you need. You're comfortable with your wording? Seek a seconder. Councillor McInnes, thank you. Any further questions or understanding for this?
Yeah, just a quick one, please, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councillor?
I'm just wondering where this section came from. So, should this be a standard that comes, if it's pursuant to Section 3 of the investigation policy, is that in the investigation policy that the that whoever has had complaint made against it had their response put into the council report, or is open to then council?
I'll seek some guidance. I think I know the answer to the process as opposed to the content of the wording, but I'll see if there's anything additional, CEO.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'll go through the governance.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, CEO. Yeah, by virtue of the investigation policy, the investigation report is a confidential document, and the response, the statement of response provided by a councillor, if they choose to make one, is also a confidential document as part of the investigation report, not the officer's report that appears in the public agenda.
Can I perhaps?
Yeah,
Can I maybe just see if I can interpret? I think Councillor McConnell's question was specifically this motion hasn't appeared in prior matters. Should it be something that is there a reason why it is now here on this occasion, and is this something for a future standard? Is that the right gist of what you were saying, Councillor McConnell?
that's correct, Mr Mayor. It's just making sure we have consistency of of all these inappropriate conduct matters? All these investigations.
So, can I maybe, sorry, Councillor Chalk?
Well, at this point, remember, this has come from the investigator as a recommendation. It's not written by council officers, so that's where the inconsistency will lie. So the question is whether we actually need it, because we haven't needed it before. Jeff's right, so.
So I think that is a valid question. Can I maybe frame to the last comment, CEO, to the last comment from the principal specialist, is this merely articulating what already is required to happen within the investigation policy and therefore is somewhat redundant to continue with? Therefore, Councillor Enright, do you have the appetite to withdraw this motion?
Oh, I thought you should say it needs to be consistent for all investigations. If it's in our investigation policy, that whatever response the councillor has put in must become part of the meeting agenda, then that should be standard.
So,
I read through the investigation policy now.
sorry, Councillor, just to be clear, you are right on a number of those components, and the original clarification was that the investigation policy requires those actions to occur, and if a response is provided, to that be provided as part of the materials in the investigation report that's provided confidentially for councillors. Therefore, having a motion, therefore, for a report to come forward to council, it will have been assessed as having met the requirements of the investigation policy. And natural justice. Yeah, and natural justice. So this motion becomes redundant because that is a precursor to coming to the meeting. We can continue with it, but it is really only confirming that we have followed due process.
Okay, so it's not in the investigation policy that the councillor's response to the investigation then becomes the part of the meeting agenda. That's what I just heard. I just heard that the investigation report has in it that the response to the investigation is included in the meeting agenda. Is that correct or not?
Well, in the format that such is provided, in this case, those are confidential attachments. Sorry, Councillor.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, I need to reinforce there was no response provided by the former councillor. Okay, so
that's not my point though, CEO. My point was the council officer just said, as part of the investigation report, that the response by the councillor is included in the meeting agenda.
Yeah, no,
I'm just trying to find out whether I heard that wrong.
You know, I think you heard that wrong. It's included in the investigation report. It's included in the investigation report, which remains confidential.
Okay. Happy with that then?
Okay. Councillor Enright, you comfortable withdraw? You're doing some yo-yos today, but this is dealing with the variations of some of the investigators.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Look, given that it justifies that we've followed the correct process, I guess there's no reason that we have to include it as an action of council. It just reinforces that the process has been followed in an appropriate way. So happy to withdraw if that seems to be the way to go.
Councillor McGuinness, happy to withdraw?
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Enright, are there any more matters you wish to bring forward to deal with this matter?
Mayor, I'd just like to seek some governance advice on the final item in the investigators' report and their recommendation.
Council, then will that take long, or you? We'll just pause.
Happy to adjourn if you...
No, we'll just pause for a moment and let you seek that guidance.
Thank you, Mayor. I have received the advice from the governance area, and I'm happy that this final recommendation doesn't need to come forward to council.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other matters to raise in concern, any other motions that anyone wishes to propose in relation to this matter? If not, then bring the matter to a close, and we'll just pause to recover Councillor Hay to deal with item 11.4. If you could just come back to the start of that matter, just so that we can bring Councillor Hay up to speed with there, were you there? You're there. We've worked through a series of motions. Firstly, to receive, we were through the first motion. We've now received the investigation report. We've made a decision concerning inappropriate conduct, and that decision has concluded about inappropriate conduct, which you can read the full detail of later. I'm probably summarising. Where did you get to ahead of me? We've determined that there was a reprimand to be issued, and we've concluded that costs in the order of 30% be reimbursed by the former councillor, and I think from my memory that's the end of the matters that we've resolved.
One question, what's the point of reprimanding a councillor who's no longer a councillor? It
will form part of, again, and I'm happy if governors want to add any advice, but one of the challenges when someone's no longer part of the chamber is it constrains the mechanisms available to council, and a reprimand's one of the avenues available to deal with such a matter. That's sufficient. Thank you. Now we move to item 11.4 on page 113 of today's agenda. And councillors, this has to do with the report to council from the Audit and Risk Committee meeting of the 1st of June 2023. Obviously, we have a regular schedule that the Audit and Risk Committee meets, and that is in accordance with our meeting planner, but also in accordance with good practice to have such an audit committee in place. And there is also a requirement that the CEO provide such a report to council following each meeting, and therefore this report today does provide such a report of the meeting held on the 1st of June. I won't go into the detail of the report. I'll table it and presume it as having been read. I'll therefore move that council note the report provided on the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on 1 June 2023. I seek a seconder. Councillor Chalk, thank you. Councillors, the floor is now open for questions and comments. And if there are none. Sorry, Councillor McConnell.
Yeah, well, I actually found the meeting, Mr. Mayor.
Question. Thank you, Councillor McConnell. Question for Councillor Hay. The question was, how did you find the ARC meeting?
Thank you. Yes, it was an excellent experience to attend as an observer in company with the governance advisor, and I did note a couple of significant comments and concerns that were raised. One was that the chair expressed significant concerns re the current level of accountability and appropriate executive scrutiny, and that the CEO responded noting that the council will have an obligation to review a suite of documents following the local government election in March 2024. So for those who have access to the agenda, there are some comments on page 120 about accountability, and on page 125 it notes that internal audit awareness training has been delivered and that, quote, the risks identified are classic red flags for fraud. So I would suggest that anyone involved in the financial side of things possibly should read through this agenda item and become aware of what the content is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hay. Any other questions? As one of the regular members of the Audit and Risk Committee, this is a very valuable process. It is dealing with trying to take from a risk perspective to an operational performance perspective the levels of control to mitigate those risks. We do have the Principal Specialist Internal Audit and Improvement with us today if there were any specifics, but that is a very important role to the support of these activities. There's a widespread accountability, and I think some of the references in the report go to the challenges from a resourcing and prioritisation point of view that have occurred in some parts of the organisation that have been called to attention, with an accountability to apply the same diligence to these aspects of their role as they do to other aspects of their role, to ensure that competent governance. I agree with the council. There were some areas called out as red flags. There were no specific examples identified. They were just alerts that these risk environments existed at this point in time. And certainly I commend that the CEO also indicated the organisation was working to put significant attention to a range of matters now, as well as that there'll be requirements after the next election. Anything else, councillors? If not, I'll simply speak in support of the motion. Audit and risk is a vital function for any organisation, particularly an organisation of the scale and complexity that we operate, and certainly because of our need to manage public assets, public resources, to a high standard. what audit and risk makes you do is pay attention to every aspect of your business on a continuing basis, and to apply the resources to ensure you're meeting those high standards. It is a good independent view to inform both the operational leadership via the CEO and his team, as well as for us as councillors sitting at this table to have a level of confidence that the right issues are being addressed and responded to, or to call us to be supporting the organisation if further resourcing is required. This report continues with that process of bringing things to our attention. I commend the report to the table. Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone seeking leave to speak additionally?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McConnell?
Thank you. I agree with everything you said. It's important that the Audit Risk Committee be given the respect it's due, and I think the two external members do a fantastic job of highlighting issues that sometimes we don't see, and their level of expertise and professionalism is, I think, second to none. I've been very impressed. So it's been one of the best committees I've been on. It's detailed, and when we get the report, there is a lot of reading, so thank you, Scott. But I highly commend the report to Council.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, put the motion. Those in favour?
Councillor McConnell, yes.
Thank you. Then that's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Now, that does bring us to the end of the business before us today. But before I close the meeting, Councillor, thank you, Principal Specialist, for assisting us. You got off lightly. Councillor McConnell, you requested earlier to make some comments on a particular matter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to acknowledge the Tamworth Regional Council, where I'm currently out at the moment, who allowed me to use their facility in Tamworth to be able to video into the ordinary meeting and workshop today. So I'd like to thank the CEO, Paul Bennett, for allowing me into this room and for the hospitality that he and staff have shown me today and probably over a few days this week. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor, for noting that to our minutes. Thank you, councillors. That is the end of today's agenda, and at 12:08, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you to those in the digital gallery for joining us today, and we bid you good day until the next ordinary meeting.